They had it all: the money, the fame, the power. They were the faces of ambition and success, praised, envied, and adored. But behind the billion-dollar smiles were ticking time bombs, lies, scandals, egos, and in the end, everything vanished. Today, we unveil the emotional downfall of 5 billionaires who went from hero to zero. And most importantly, we'll show you how to protect your wealth so you never walk the same tragic path. 1. Elizabeth Holmes, the Queen of Silicon Valley, turned convicted felon. Once hailed as the female Steve Jobs, Elizabeth Holmes had Silicon Valley wrapped around her finger. She was young, brilliant, confident, and worth over $4.5 billion. Her background: name, Elizabeth Ann Holmes. Born, February 3, 1984. Country, United States. Education, Stanford University. Dropped out at 19. Early traits: determined, highly intelligent, obsessed with health tech. Born in Washington, D.C., Elizabeth Holmes wasn't your average kid. While others her age watched cartoons, she devoured medical textbooks. By 9, she wrote letters to her father describing her dream to become a billionaire entrepreneur. That dream, it would come true, but not without a price. The rise, Theranos, and the big promise. At 19, she dropped out of Stanford, using her tuition to start a company. That company, Theranos, its mission: to revolutionize blood testing with just a drop of blood. Investors poured in cash. General James Mattis joined the board. Former secretaries of state, billionaire fund managers. Walgreens agreed to pilot her tech nationwide. Holmes' company was now valued at $9 billion. She owned half. That made her one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in the world. But behind the lab coats and the confidence was a lie. Whistleblowers came forward. They claimed the device didn't work. Results were inaccurate. Lives were at risk. The machine, called the Edison, was nothing more than a prop. Most tests were secretly outsourced to traditional labs. Investigations began. The media turned. Holmes went from cover girl to criminal. She was indicted for wire fraud and conspiracy to commit fraud. In 2022, she was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. Her company dissolved. Her wealth gone. Theranos didn't just destroy investor money. It shattered trust in innovation. And Elizabeth Holmes became the face of what happens when ambition crosses the line into deception. So what can we learn? Lesson 1. Don't let ego outpace ethics. When your desire to be admired outweighs your desire to be truthful, you're on a dangerous path. Lesson 2. Validate, then scale. Build real value before you chase investors or media attention. Proof of concept is everything. Lesson 3. Transparency builds trust. Never trade integrity for ambition. Investors and partners respect honesty more than hype. Lesson 4. Protect your wealth from legal liability. Holmes' personal assets were tied to Theranos. Always separate personal finances from business risk and use legal structures that shield your wealth. Holmes had the world in her hands, but she wasn't ready to hold it. And in chasing the dream too fast, she lost it all. Up next, another genius, another empire, another crash. From $26 billion to a jail cell, Sam Bankman-Fried, the fall of a crypto king. He called it effective altruism. He promised to give his billions away. He became the face of crypto innovation. But in the blink of an eye, Sam Bankman-Fried lost everything and left millions of people in ruins. Background: full name, Samuel Benjamin Bankman-Fried. Born, March 6, 1992. Country, United States. Education, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, physics major. Early personality: quiet, brilliant, socially awkward, strategic thinker. Born to 2 Stanford law professors, Sam Bankman-Fried, often called SBF, was raised in a world of intellect and idealism. At MIT, he found his passion not in physics, but in arbitrage, the art of profiting from price differences. This curiosity would soon grow into a billion-dollar business and a global empire. In 2019, Sam launched FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange that quickly gained worldwide popularity. What made it special? Low fees, complex trading options, a slick interface, but most importantly, trust. He positioned himself not just as a founder, but as a moral leader. He donated millions to political causes, promised to give away most of his fortune, and even testified before Congress. By early 2022, his net worth peaked at $26 billion. He bought naming rights to an NBA arena, partnered with celebrities like Tom Brady and Larry David. FTX was everywhere, but what the world didn't know was that behind the scenes, Sam was playing with fire. In late 2022, questions began swirling. A leaked balance sheet showed Sam's private hedge fund, Alameda Research, was deeply entangled with FTX customer funds. Billions in FTX deposits had been secretly loaned to Alameda to cover risky trades, to buy luxury real estate. to fund political ambitions. As panic spread, FTX users rushed to withdraw their money. But there was none left. Over $8 billion vanished. Investors were stunned. Ordinary people lost life savings. In December 2022, Sam was arrested in the Bahamas. He was extradited to the US and charged with one of the biggest financial frauds in history. This wasn't just the fall of a company. It was the shattering of trust in the entire crypto industry. College students who believed in him, crypto traders who saw him as a role model, people from poor countries who trusted him with their only wealth, all left empty-handed. Sam Bankman-Fried once stood for giving back. Now, he's facing over 100 years in prison. Lessons from SB's downfall. Lesson 1. Transparency is more powerful than hype. Many were dazzled by Sam's intelligence and promises. But a lack of oversight allowed massive fraud. Never invest blindly, no matter how smart the founder seems. Lesson 2. Separate personal beliefs from financial responsibility. Sam promoted effective altruism, earning to give. But good intentions don't excuse financial recklessness. Always keep values and accountability aligned. Lesson 3. Protect your wealth with diversification. Thousands had all their savings in FTX. When it fell, they lost everything. Spread your investments. Never put all your wealth in one platform or asset class. Lesson 4. Watch for cults of personality. When someone becomes too idolized, be cautious. Wealth is built on systems, not saviors. Sam Bankman-Fried wanted to save the world. But in trying to play God, he broke it, and now he walks into a courtroom. A fallen emperor of crypto. Up next, a man once richer than Elon Musk. Once the pride of Brazil, now bankrupt, shamed, and forgotten. Eike Batista, Brazil's $30 billion man. WHO lost it all. Once, he walked with presidents. Cloak of turning Brazil into an economic superpower. He was admired, envied, worshipped. With a fortune of over $30 billion, Eike Batista was Latin America's crown jewel. But then, in just 2 years, everything vanished. Background: full name, Eike Batista da Silva. Born, November 3, 1956. Country, Brazil. Education, studied metallurgical engineering in Germany. Did not complete. Early career, gold trading in the Amazon rainforest. Born to a wealthy and influential family, Eike Batista seemed destined for greatness. His father, a former Minister of Mines and Energy, exposed him to the world of natural resources early on. But Eike was never content with privilege. He had a dream bigger than himself, to make Brazil the center of the global economy. In the 1980s, Eike began buying and selling gold from the Amazon. From there, he expanded into mining, energy, and logistics. He launched the EBX Group, a conglomerate of companies ending in X, which, he claimed, symbolized the multiplication of wealth. MMX, mining. OGX, oil and gas. LLX, logistics. MPX, power. OSX, offshore services. Brazil's economy was booming. Foreign investors flocked in. Batista promised oil riches, modern ports, and energy independence. In 2012, Forbes ranked him the 7th richest person on earth and the richest in Brazil, with a net worth over $30 billion. He dated models, threw lavish parties, and said he'd one day surpass Carlos Slim and Bill Gates. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a national icon. But behind the charisma and the promises lurked a storm. Ike's crown jewel, OGX, promised to produce 750,000 barrels of oil per day. Investors believed him. He raised billions from global banks and governments. But when OGX began drilling, the wells were empty. Instead of 750,000 barrels, they got just 15,000. The technology was weak, the estimates were inflated, and the whole empire was built on projections, not production. Stock prices crashed, confidence disappeared, investors panicked. By 2014, Batista's companies had lost over $35 billion in market value. OGX filed for Brazil's largest ever bankruptcy, and Batista went from the richest man in Brazil to being in debt. And then came the scandals. Eike Batista wasn't just guilty of bad business decisions. He was also involved in Brazil's massive corruption scheme, Operation Car Wash. In 2017, he was arrested and accused of paying $16 million in bribes to a former Rio de Janeiro governor in exchange for government contracts. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, though released pending appeal. His fortune, gone. His companies, gone. His legacy, destroyed. Thousands of workers lost their jobs. Pension funds evaporated. And a nation that once believed in a golden future was left bitter and broken. From driving Ferraris to wearing an ankle bracelet, Eike Batista's fall wasn't just financial. It was spiritual. Lessons from Ike's downfall. Lesson 1. Never overpromise and underdeliver. Batista's empire collapsed because it was built on dreams, not results. Build a foundation before you build a facade. Lesson 2. Separate hype from value. Investors were dazzled by Batista's confidence. But confidence isn't the same as competence. Due diligence is the first rule of preserving wealth. Lesson 3. Keep ego in check. His personalized license plate read, Eike. His obsession with being number one led him to ignore reality. Stay grounded, even when the world praises you. Lesson 4. Political ties are risky wealth anchors. He relied heavily on government contracts and relationships. When politics turned, his empire crumbled. Never tether your wealth to power that you do not control. Lesson 5. Protect your legacy with integrity. You can make a fortune, but how you make it determines whether it lasts. Eike Batista wanted to be Brazil's first trillionaire. Instead, he became a cautionary tale, proof that the higher you rise on illusion, the harder you fall in reality. Next, a man from a small Irish town, who went from cement to insurance to billions, then to bankruptcy and jail. He was Ireland's richest, until he wasn't. Sean Quinn, the man WHO lost Ireland. In a small Irish village, a young man started selling gravel from his backyard. Over time, he built an empire that spanned insurance, hotels, cement, and banking. He became the richest man in Ireland, worth over $6 billion. But then, in one breathtaking collapse, he lost everything. This is the story of Sean Quinn, the man who touched the sky, and then crashed to the very bottom. Background: full name, Sean Quinn. Born, December 5, 1947. Country, Ireland. Early life, born in rural Derrylin, County Fermanagh, a small farming town. Education, left school early, no formal university education. Sean Quinn was a man of the people. Born into modest circumstances in post-war Ireland, he left school early to help with the family farm. But what he lacked in education, he made up for with grit. In 1973, with a £100 loan, he began extracting gravel from his land and selling it to local builders. That small operation would evolve into Quinn Cement, Ireland's leading cement and building material provider. Sean's cement company grew rapidly, fueled by the Celtic Tiger boom. Ireland's construction sector exploded, and Sean was at the heart of it. But he didn't stop at cement. He expanded into insurance, Quinn Direct, glass, hotels, property, and energy. Soon, his empire employed over 5,000 people. Quinn became a folk hero in Ireland, especially in border communities. He was humble, private, and deeply loyal to his region. By 2008, Sean Quinn was worth over $6 billion. Not bad for a man who started with a wheelbarrow of gravel. But then, he made a gamble that would destroy him. Unlike most billionaires, Sean didn't lose it all due to corruption, fraud, or scandal. He lost it because of a single catastrophic investment decision. In 2007, Quinn began buying shares in Anglo-Irish Bank, one of the fastest-growing financial institutions in Ireland. But instead of buying regular shares, he used a complicated financial instrument called Contracts for Difference, CFDs. This meant he didn't just own the shares, he was leveraged on them. At one point, Sean Quinn controlled 25% of Anglo-Irish Bank through CFDs, without actually owning any real shares. When the 2008 global financial crisis hit, Anglo-Irish Bank collapsed. The shares tanked, and Sean Quinn's entire leveraged position imploded. He owed the bank billions. The Irish government nationalized Anglo-Irish Bank to save the financial system, now called IBRC, and it came after Sean Quinn. Over the next few years, IBRC sued the Quinn family for billions in unpaid loans. They accused Sean of trying to hide assets in foreign countries, including property in Russia, Ukraine, and Cyprus. In 2011, Sean Quinn was declared bankrupt. His family empire was dismantled. Assets were seized. He was jailed in 2012 for contempt of court for refusing to cooperate. The man, once beloved by his community, now stood as a cautionary tale of greed, risk, and denial. To many Irish citizens, Quinn's downfall felt personal. He wasn't some distant tycoon. He built schools, sponsored local GAA teams, paid good wages. He was the people's billionaire. But the truth was undeniable. One bad bet cost thousands their jobs and destroyed one of Ireland's biggest private companies. To this day, his legacy divides the nation, a hero or a hustler. Lessons from Sean Quinn's fall. Lesson 1. Don't bet the farm. Quinn risked his empire on a single financial instrument. No matter how big you are, diversify. Never gamble at all. Lesson 2. Understand what you're investing in. He used complex financial products like CFDs, which magnify losses. If you don't fully understand an investment, don't make it. Lesson 3. Avoid emotional attachment to risky assets. Even as Anglo-Irish collapsed, Quinn kept doubling down. Emotions have no place in wealth protection. Lesson 4. Don't mix business with blind loyalty. He didn't listen to advisors. His inner circle couldn't stop him. Build a team that challenges your ego. Lesson 5. Wealth isn't just money, it's reputation. Sean Quinn had all the money, But after the fall, he lost something even more valuable: trust. Quinn once symbolized what was possible in modern Ireland. But in chasing more, he lost everything. Our final story is perhaps the darkest. A man who flew jets, owned cricket teams, and wore a knighthood. But beneath the glitter was a lie worth $7 billion. 5. Alan Stanford, the billionaire banker who lied to the world. He was a billionaire banker, a cricket sponsor, a knight. He flew in private jets, owned Caribbean islands, and lived in luxury. To the world, Alan Stanford was the American dream in human form. But behind the wealth and glamour was one of the largest Ponzi schemes in US history. A lie that stole over $7 billion from thousands of investors. This is the story of Alan Stanford, the man who built his empire on deception and paid for it with his freedom. His background: full name, Robert Alan Stanford. Born, March 24, 1950. Country, United States. Education, Baylor University, Economics. Early life, humble beginnings in Texas. Start, real estate and insurance in the 1980s. Alan Stanford wasn't born into wealth. He started in Texas, running a small insurance company with his father. But by the late 1980s, he saw an opportunity in offshore banking, far from the eyes of US regulators. In 1985, Stanford set up the Stanford International Bank in Antigua and Barbuda, a tiny Caribbean island nation. He promised clients something few banks could: high returns with no risk. And people believed him. Doctors, teachers, athletes, retirees. Over 30,000 investors put their life savings into his offshore certificates of deposit, CDs. Stanford lived like royalty. He wore suits with the Stanford crest, flew private jets, and held VIP parties with celebrities and politicians. He was even knighted by Antigua's government for his contributions to the nation. At his peak, Alan Stanford was worth over $2 billion. He claimed his bank managed over $8 billion in assets. But it was all smoke and mirrors. In 2009, the US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, launched an investigation. What they found shocked the world. The high returns, fake; the bank's assets, fabricated; the statements investors received, worthless. Stanford had been using new investor money to pay off old investors. The classic Ponzi scheme. The investments he claimed were in real estate and bonds were actually in unsecured personal loans to himself. Over $7 billion vanished. Stanford was arrested in June 2009. The trial revealed the depth of the fraud. He used investor funds to buy yachts, jets, mansions, and even bribe government officials in Antigua. In 2012, he was found guilty on 13 counts, including fraud, obstruction, and money laundering. Sentence: 110 years in federal prison. His victims weren't billionaires. They were everyday people: school teachers, retirees, nurses. Many lost their homes, their savings, and their hope. Stanford's empire collapsed, but the emotional toll still echoes through thousands of lives. To this day, many victims have only recovered pennies on the dollar. Alan Stanford, once a knighted billionaire, now sits in a prison cell. A man who robbed people of their futures to fund his fantasy. Lessons from Stanford's scheme. Lesson 1. High returns equals high risk. Stanford promised up to 15% annual returns with no risk. A red flag in any market. If it sounds too good to be true, it always is. Lesson 2. Vet where you bank and invest. Offshore accounts may sound glamorous, but they can lack proper regulation. Invest only in institutions governed by transparent, reputable authorities. Lesson 3. Monitor your wealth closely. Thousands of Stanford's victims didn't notice the irregularities until it was too late. Review your statements, track your accounts, and demand transparency. Lesson 4. Don't confuse lifestyle with legitimacy. Stanford's luxury fooled people, but a big house and a private jet don't mean honest wealth. Judge investments by facts, not flash. Lesson 5. Diversify to protect. Thousands had all their retirement savings in Stanford CDs. Never invest everything in one fund, company, or individual, no matter how convincing they seem. Alan Stanford fooled the world with charm, confidence, and lies. But no mask can hide the truth forever, and no fortune built on fraud will ever stand the test of time. You've now seen the rise and fall of 5 billionaires, each from different countries, different industries, different lives, but all with one tragic thing in common: they lost everything. Elizabeth Holmes believed her lie would one day become truth. Sam Bankman-Fried hid behind charity while moving billions in silence. Eike Batista thought ego was enough to replace output. Quinn gambled the family empire on a bad hand. And Alan Stanford, he chose lies over lives. How to protect your wealth. 1. Build wealth slowly and transparently. The fastest route to wealth is often the riskiest. True wealth is built step by step, with patience, proof, and principle. 2. Protect your assets legally. Use trusts, LLCs, and diversified portfolios to shield your wealth from lawsuits, taxes, and collapses. 3. Don't chase trends blindly. Crypto, stocks, property, study them before you invest. Do your homework. Avoid the crowd when it moves too fast. 4. Keep greed and ego in check. The minute you think you can't lose, you've already lost. 5. Stay humble, stay watchful, stay educated. Because wealth isn't just money, it's peace of mind. And that's something no one can afford to lose. This is not just a documentary about billionaires. It's a warning, a lesson, a mirror, because one day, you might be the one building your empire. Just remember, it's not how much you make, it's how much you protect.